The forests of California had become a blazing inferno, a relentless hellscape where life itself seemed to wither under the fury of the flames. The once majestic trees, guardians of the wilderness for centuries, were now reduced to skeletal torches, their branches snapping and popping as the fire consumed them with a voracious appetite. The sky had vanished, swallowed whole by a suffocating blanket of black smoke that hung low, pressing down on the earth like a mourner's shroud. The air was thick, acrid, and searing, each breath a punishment, each gust of wind a cruel whip, of heat and ash. The forest floor, once carpeted with soft moss and fallen leaves, was now a graveyard of embers, glowing red and treacherous underfoot. The wildlife that had thrived here, deer, foxes, owls, and countless others, were now frantic, refugees in their own home. Their cries pierced the air, a cacophony of terror and anguish as they fled the encroaching blaze. Squirrels raced up trees only to find them ignite beneath their paws. Birds launched into the sky, their feathers singed mid-flight, tumbling back to earth in smoldering heaps. Amid this chaos, a single fawn stood alone, a fragile speck of life in a world unraveling. Its mother was gone, perhaps lost to the flames, perhaps separated in the mad scramble for survival. The fawn's delicate legs quaked beneath it, its thin frame swaying as it took faltering steps through the haze, searching for a familiar scent, a comforting nudge, anything to anchor it in this nightmare. But there was nothing. Only the fire's relentless advance, its orange tongues licking at the edges of the fawn's vision, its heat wrapping around the tiny creature like a suffocating embrace. The smoke was a living thing, curling into its nostrils, clawing at its throat, filling its lungs with a bitter, choking weight. Its fur, once a soft, dappled brown, was streaked with ash, the tips curling and blackening as embers rained down like cruel stars. The fawn's eyes, wide and glistening with fear, darted through the gloom, but the world had become a blur of shadow and flame. Its strength was draining, seeping away with every labored breath. The heat was unbearable, its hooves blistered. Against the scorched earth, its body trembled with exhaustion, and its small heart pounded a frantic, fading rhythm. It couldn't go on. With a final broken bleat, a sound so soft it was swallowed by the fire's roar, the fawn's legs gave out. It crumpled to the ground, its body folding into itself as if seeking shelter within its own frail form. The earth beneath it was hot, unforgiving, a bed of ash and pain. The fawn lay there motionless, its chest rising and falling in shallow, ragged gasps. Smoke coiled around it, a gray shroud that blotted out the last slivers of light. Its eyes fluttered, heavy with the weight of surrender as the darkness of death crept closer. The forest, once a sanctuary of rustling leaves and gentle breezes, was now a mausoleum, its every corner echoing with the screams of the dying. The fawn was alone, abandoned to a fate it couldn't comprehend, a tiny life snuffed out by a catastrophe, too vast to resist. This was the end, or so it seemed. The fire raged on, indifferent to the suffering it wrought, its crackling laughter drowning out the fawn's weakening pulse. The world was a furnace, a crucible of destruction where hope had no place. The fawn's heartbeat slowed to a whisper. Each beat a fragile thread stretched to its breaking point. Its body grew still, its spirit teetering on the brink of oblivion. Around it, the forest groaned its final lament. Ancient oaks split apart, their trunks exploding in showers of sparks. Pine needles hissed as they vaporized. The distant wail of a trapped creature faded into silence. All was lost. The fawn's eyes closed, sealing shut against the horror, ready to let go. But fate, in its unpredictable cruelty or mercy, had not yet finished its tale. Mere seconds, agonizing infinitesimal ticks of time, stood between the fawn's last breath and a unforeseen twist. Through the swirling chaos of flame and smoke, a shadow pierced the veil. It was faint at first, a ghostly outline against the blinding wall of fire, but it grew sharper, more resolute with every step. A pair of hands emerged from the haze, rough, calloused, trembling with exhaustion yet driven by an unyielding will. The fawn, hovering on the edge of nothingness, felt a sudden warmth. Not the cruel heat of the fire, but the desperate grip of life. A man, his face smeared with soot, his eyes red-rimmed and fierce, knelt beside the fallen creature. His clothes were ragged, torn by thorns and singed by embers, but he moved with purpose, scooping the fawn into his arms as if it were the last precious thing in a world gone mad. Was this a miracle? A fleeting glimmer of salvation in a landscape of despair? Or was it a hollow reprieve, a cruel tease before the inevitable? The fawn's body hung limp in his grasp, its head lolling against his chest, its breathing so faint it was barely a whisper against the chaos. The man staggered to his feet, his own lungs burning as he inhaled the poisoned air. He clutched the fawn tighter, shielding it from the cascading ash, his arms trembling under the weight of both its fragility and his own faltering strength. The fire roared around them, a monstrous beast that seemed to taunt their defiance, its flames stretching higher as if eager to claim them both. Who was this man? A hero forged in the crucible of disaster, or a broken soul clinging to one last act of redemption? Perhaps he was a firefighter, one of the weary warriors who had battled this blaze for days, his mask lost, his equipment abandoned in the chaos, driven now by instinct alone. Or maybe he was a local, a man who had watched his home crumble to ash, his family scattered or worse, and now wandered the ruins with nothing left but this fawn, this tiny, trembling life, as his final stand against despair. His voice rasped through the smoke, a cracked and desperate murmur. "Stay with me, little one. Please, just stay with me." Tears carved clean streaks through the grime on his face, evaporating in the heat before they could fall. Could the fawn survive? Its body was a battlefield, lungs scorched, limbs weak, spirit battered by the relentless terror of the fire. Every breath was a struggle, a shallow wheeze that rattled in its chest. The man pushed forward, his boots crunching over the smoldering wreckage of the forest, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of safety. A clearing, a stream, a break in the wall of flame. But the fire was a living entity, cunning and cruel, curling around them like a predator toying with its prey. Embers rained down, stinging his skin, igniting his sleeves, but he pressed on, driven by a stubborn, almost irrational hope. The fawn stirred faintly in his arms, its eyes flickering open to meet his, a fleeting connection, a shared plea for mercy in a world that offered none. The odds were insurmountable. The heat pressed in, a suffocating weight that sapped his energy, blurred his vision and turned his legs to lead. The smoke was a wall, impenetrable and lethal, choking him with every step. He stumbled, falling to one knee, the fawn slipping slightly in his grasp. His hands tightened around it, a silent vow not to let go, even as his own body screamed for respite. The forest offered no solace, only the relentless advance of the flames, the groan of collapsing trees, and the eerie silence where life had once thrived. The man's strength was fading, his breaths coming in gasps, his hope fraying at the edges. He sank to the ground, cradling the fawn against his chest, his back hunched as if to shield it from the end. And yet, the story hung in suspense, unresolved and aching. What happened next? Did they find refuge? A miraculous pocket of cool air? A hidden spring where the fire couldn't reach? Did a rescue team break through the inferno at the last moment, their shouts cutting through the din as they pulled man and fawn to safety? Or did the flames close in, relentless and unforgiving, consuming them in a final, tragic embrace? The fawn's fate, and the man's, dangled on a knife's edge, a fragile thread stretched taut between life and death, hope and despair. The fire raged on, an insatiable force of nature, its hunger unquenched. The sky remained a void, the earth a pyre, and the heart of the story beat with unbearable tension. Keep watching. Salvation or annihilation, what would it be? The seconds ticked by, each one a lifetime, and the answer remained just out of reach, lost in the smoke and the flames.